Where is Jesus the peacemaker? The one some call the Prince of Peace. The one who asks us to love our enemies. The one who tells us to forgive one another, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. The one who tells his disciples again and again, peace be with you. Why would Jesus tell us that he comes not to bring peace, but division? I have Midwestern roots, and I spent a significant portion of my life in Wisconsin and Minnesota. Anyone else here from the Midwest? I know my co-leaders here are, just so you know, this sermon is not directed towards them. Right, so whether you've been there or not, maybe you've heard the phrase Minnesota nice. Does that sound familiar? Okay, well, whether you've heard it or not, I looked it up on Wikipedia to get an official definition, so I can offer it for you this morning. Minnesota nice is a cultural stereotype applied to the behavior of people from Minnesota and Wisconsin, implying residents are unusually courteous, reserved, mild-mannered, and passive-aggressive against people who are not like them. The phrase also implies polite friendliness, an aversion to open confrontation, a tendency towards understatement, a disinclination to make a direct fuss or stand out, apparent emotional restraint, and self-deprecation. So Minnesota nice is a stereotype, and it sounds so familiar. And not only among Minnesotans, let's be honest. There are many cultures, many families that teach us that the most appropriate thing, or even the most loving thing, is to be nice. To stay silent when there's a disagreement. To avoid addressing anything that is difficult. To hide the ways in which we are different. Does this sound familiar to you? Is this something that you have been taught? Not everyone, right? But it's out there. I know there are people here who have been taught that. And there are good reasons to be nice. We can soften the roughness of our social interactions. We can give one another the benefit of the doubt if a word falls astray. We can smooth over those small skirmishes in our social lives with kindness. Being nice can be the generous thing to do. And it benefits us as well. If we want to stay in good relationship with our families and friends and communities, if we want to avoid the heat and the hurt that conflict can bring. Many of us, not all of us, but many of us prefer our interactions with one another to be calm, to be pleasant, even if that sometimes comes with a cost. Unfortunately, continuously avoiding publicly expressed conflict is not the same thing as cultivating peace. A completely conflict-free relationship or community is not peaceful. It is dead, or at least on its way to dying. Conflict is a part of life, and avoiding it, ignoring it, can seriously damage the ties that bind us until they come apart altogether. So Jesus is here to lead us into division. And even though this passage may bother us, it sounds wrong. Jesus says nothing in this passage that we don't already know from other parts of his story. Jesus preaches that God's realm is being realized within and around us, a revolution as small and powerful as a mustard seed or a grain of yeast. Jesus teaches us to welcome those at the margins of our society and to reverse the power structures that put some above and others below. Jesus invites individuals to give away everything they have in total defiance of any economic system I'm familiar with. Jesus advocates for profound social and cultural and religious and political change. It's enough to get him run out of his hometown. It's enough to get him disavowed by those closest to him. It's enough to get him convicted of sedition and killed. We already know that the truth and love and justice that Jesus lives and draws us into can cause division. It's just uncomfortable to openly acknowledge that and to begin to reckon with what it might mean for us in our own lives. So I wonder, where in your life have you been avoiding conflict? In what relationships have you chosen not to be your true or full self? In what systems have you not raised questions or advocated for needed change? Or, to approach it from another direction, when has someone tried to have a hard conversation with you and you took it as an affront rather than an invitation? When have you noticed someone stirring things up in a community and wished they would just stop, rather than considering first whether there's something of real value in what they're offering? Not all conflict, of course, is fruitful. Plenty of fights are started and carried out with selfishness and fear and intolerance and stubbornness. But the fact that we so often fight badly doesn't mean we shouldn't fight at all. Learning how to fight well is one of the most important skills we can gain as Christians and as people. It enriches every relationship that we have, whether a marriage or a friendship, as a parent or as a professional, as part of a family or a congregation or a nation. It's hard, though. I know it's so hard to do well. But what healing might be possible if we stopped being so nice and instead offered the gift of a deeper honesty somewhere in our lives? What situation can you imagine right now that could be renewed or enlivened if you were only willing to enter into an issue that's been avoided for the sake of the health and integrity of that relationship? Please pray with me. Jesus, you invite us to seek those deepest kinds of peace that often require division along the way. Teach us to desire that deep peace so much that we are willing to endure and even initiate conflict. Remind us that treasuring our relationships, our communities, our countries means bringing honesty even when it is hard. Soften our hearts so that we might offer our honesty with humility and compassion, with accountability and curiosity. Help us to learn from one another, to grow with one another, to strengthen and renew our bonds whenever possible. And console us in those situations where it is not safe for us to engage, or when our efforts are not enough to bridge a gap. Keep working on our hearts and help us to know that however difficult this work, you are there, accompanying us with love. Amen.